So we're now 5 days into October. It's the 5th of October today, and as you will have seen in my previous video doing a horror movie month, which I understand quite a lot of people are doing here on YouTube, where essentially watch a horror movie a day in the month of October leading up to Halloween, which is incidentally my birthday. So that is why Halloween means so much to me. Just an interesting little side note there. So I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about what I've been watching so far this month, and to basically give my brief thoughts on the movies. Now, some of these movies will undoubtedly be movies that I've reviewed in the past on YouTube, and in that instance I won't talk too much about them on these videos, because there will be movie reviews that you can go and check out earlier on my channel. So we kicked off the month on the 1st of October with a film that Laura and I both love, Laura being my partner. We both love this movie, and we decided to basically have the first week be the more sort of recent horror movies that we like, or rather that I like and subject Laura to. And the first one is one that we do both love, and that is Neil Marshall's The Descent. Now, The Descent is a film which has a bit of a peculiar history in that the versions released, it's a British film, the versions released in England and in the States actually differ quite drastically at the end. The States version was recut with the idea of making a sequel in mind, but this version is the English one, of course, and is the much bleaker version in my opinion. Now, why do I love The Descent? Essentially, The Descent is a character drama or a psychological thriller which just so happens to have monsters in it. It's essentially as well the best, or one of the best chick flicks I think I've ever seen, and I would consider it a chick flick thanks to an all-female cast. I think they managed to, the actresses cast in this film, there isn't a weak link in the bunch. I think they really do manage to convey the sort of interesting dynamics of female friendships in this movie, and yeah, it doesn't feel forced, it feels quite sort of organic to the movie, and I think that's thanks to the almost sort of naturalistic way that the actresses portray their characters. Now, standout performance in this has to be Shauna MacDonald as Sarah. She's the main character who at the very beginning of the movie suffers a great tragedy and is trying to get over it for the rest of the film. Essentially, one of the group called Juno invites the rest out to go caving, explore some caves together. They get trapped underground and are hunted down by some creatures, humanoid creatures below the ground. And it does really ratchet up the tension. It does take its time. I mean, the film itself, it's only 95 minutes long, but it does take its time to ratchet up that tension. And Neil Marshall, to his credit, lets the film kind of breathe in that, being down a cave, and I must admit the cinematography down the caves, I don't know whether or not they filmed some of it in real caves, but I know a lot of it was on a sound studio. They do really allow that situation to speak for itself, in that it's frightening enough being down a cave. I've been caving and I hated every minute of it, and it is very frightening being down there. So Neil Marshall lets that sort of aspect of the film breathe before he introduces the creatures, and that does help ratchet up the tension. And again, the gore effects in it is a very, very violent film, but the gore effects are so almost over the top. I mean, they are realistic, but they're also over the top and gratuitous in the way that they're shot, that it borders on splatstick, which is another subgenre of horror which is very interesting to me. And you look at other stuff that Neil Marshall's done, like Dog Soldiers and Doomsday, and you can see that that's definitely something that he puts into almost all of his movies. But the film itself, as I say, it's 95 minutes, it's actually frightening. If you don't find the creatures frightening, then the idea of being down a cave, if you ask me, is frightening enough, but then again, I'm sort of claustrophobic. But the way it's shot is very kind of naturalistic as well. The only light down the cave is what they bring with them, and it makes you feel like you're there and you're along for the ride. So The Descent is definitely one of the better horror movies of recent years. We then went on to watch a movie that I have reviewed before on YouTube, so I'll just give brief thoughts. This was on day 2, and that is the remake of the Crazies. Now, I will just say right now, I've never seen the original. The Crazies is a film that I really enjoyed when it came out, and if you go back through my previous reviews, you'll find a review of the Crazies, and it'll flesh out, you know, kind of why I liked this movie. But watching it a couple of years down the line, because I think it is, was it 2009 this came out, or 2010, something like that. Watching it, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, I do still love it. The reasons I love it are that it's again, like 98 minutes, it's quick and dirty, it has a very solid 3-act structure in that it's essentially, the film is about a zombie outbreak, but the specifics of the zombies and the disease are changed around and stuff, so it's like a slightly different kind of take on the zombie outbreak genre. It does have a very solid 3-act structure in that the first half hour is essentially the outbreak, the second is military containment, and the third is the aftermath, and it sticks very stringently to that 3-act structure. It definitely follows a formula in that regard, but it does show you why the formula works. These things are cliches for a reason, because when they're done right, they're good, you know, and I do think that in following the formula of these sort of outbreak movies, it really does, you know, make it a better movie in some regards, because I know that not many people had high hopes of this when it came out, and to be honest, I think it's a little gem of a movie. I think people overlook this because they think, oh, it's another remake of a Romero film, I'm not going to bother watching it, who needs remakes, blah blah blah, but this is a terrific little film if you ask me. Other reasons I love it, the cast are all really good, they're not given much time to do an awful lot with the characters, but what they do is quite believable. You've got Timothy Olyfantastic as the main character, as the town sheriff, who is basically the hero of the film, and Radha Mitchell playing his pregnant wife. You have his deputy, who the actor's name escapes me, but all these characters I actually find quite likeable, and that's the key to the film's success. The film is essentially, it's a roller coaster ride of a movie. It's a string of very well directed set pieces, very tense set pieces, strung together by, you know, kind of minimal amounts of story, and but it works. Some of the set pieces include Radha Mitchell's character being tied down in a hospital while one of the Crazies goes from bed to bed killing people with a pitchfork. Another is the car being attacked while it's going through a car wash. These set pieces are all really standout moments, and I think you would be hard pressed to find somebody who didn't enjoy this movie on some level. The score as well is brilliant. The score is very haunting, very kind of early John Carpenter-esque. So The Crazies, definitely, I think it's definitely an underrated movie. You see, it's got a lenticular cover here. It's underrated, and I would recommend it because I think too many people overlook this film, and I really, really love it. It's probably on my top 100 movies of all time, which is another series of videos coming soon. Day 3 was a film that seemed to slip under the radar. I don't know if it was directed DVD, I believe it was, but it's a film directed by a guy called Mike Flanagan, and it is Absentia. Now, there was backlash surrounding this movie when it came out. It's fairly recent, it came out in the last couple of months, I think. Apparently people found the cover art to be very misleading, because you look at that and it looks like, you know, another run-of-the-mill, straight-to-DVD, gratuitous horror movie, blah blah blah. But it's actually a very, very well-directed, well-written, well-acted, understated character drama that just so happens to be a horror movie. Now, the film itself basically follows 2 female characters, one of which is pregnant, whose husband disappeared 7 years ago. The other character is her sister, who comes to visit for a while. And the pregnant character, whose name is escaping me at the moment, Trisha, her husband Daniel has been gone for 7 years, and she's having him declared dead in absentia, which basically means she's having him declared dead because he's fucking vanished and he's more than likely dead. And apparently you have to wait 7 years to do so. Now she starts having visions that she sees Daniel not looking his best. I will say that, basically haunting her, sees the ghost of Daniel, so to speak. Nobody else sees it, you know, it's essentially hints that she's losing her shit. You know, she's pregnant, she's hormonal, she's still mourning, really, because she's never had closure on what happened to her husband. So it hints that she's losing her marbles. And essentially, she has him declared dead in absentia. And then there is a tipping point in the movie that changes everything. Now, I won't tell you what that is because I want people to watch this movie. This is one of the best horror movies to come out in a long fucking time. Like, you do not get a horror movie this good very often. And people will see this on the shelf in Sainsbury's and probably walk past it, but definitely check out Absentia. Reasons I love it: the acting is brilliant. Every actor in this is fantastic. The actress who plays Trisha, I don't know if she's actually, you know, if they filmed it while she was pregnant in real life, but she has very convincing, she's very convincingly pregnant. She is a terrific actress based on this. I've never seen her in anything else, but in this she's really good. She essentially brings a certain sort of vulnerability, but also a sort of steadfast intelligence to the role. Her sister, who is, will it tell me who she's played by? Her sister's called Kelly, and I believe the actress's name is not Courtney Bell, Katie Parker or Courtney Bell. I'm sorry, I don't know the actress's name. But the actress who plays Callie, the sister, is also really good. You know, she's a recovering drug addict, and she's wanting to look out for her sister who's going through a very difficult time, obviously. And essentially, the characters, what makes this film work is that the characters are likeable. It's another horror movie, if you ask me, where the characters are actually likeable and you care about them. And it does essentially as well base its idea around a fairy tale and folklore, and this is essentially the basis of the horror movie, and not to go into too much detail. But it is quite haunting. Why this film especially works for me is that it's not reliant on jump scares. I mean, it does probably it startles you a couple of times, but maybe not even intentionally. Essentially, what this film does really well is mise-en-scène. It will have the character of Daniel stood somewhere in the frame and you really have to notice him. It really draws no attention to stuff that shouldn't be in the frame. And it does mise-en-scène really well, if you ask me. And it actually, first time I watched it, it kept me up at night because it is actually quite frightening. And it's been a while since a horror movie's done that. So, Absentia, I highly, highly recommend. The plot goes to some really peculiar places, but it's interesting. It is a slow burner, I will warn you. It's less than 90 minutes long, but it is a slow burner. It's more a character piece than anything, but the acting's terrific. The horror is actually frightening. The story's intriguing. It's a very rewarding little film, so definitely, definitely check out Absentia. And then last night, day 4, was a double bill, actually, and I watched both of the Jeepers Creepers movies, Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2, written and directed by Victor Salva, and we all know about Victor Salva, don't we? But we won't go there, we'll just talk about the movies. Jeepers Creepers, a guilty pleasure, but I love it. I love Jeepers Creepers, and I'll tell you why. It's essentially a story about Justin Long's character and his sister travelling across the country and see what looks like somebody disposed of a body down a pipe below a church, go back and end up being chased across the country by a killer. Why do I love this movie? Several aspects. The acting, again, is really good. I like Justin Long, and the actress playing his sister is also really good. The fact that Victor Salva chose to make the protagonists brother and sister really does eliminate any sort of sexual tension, because all too often in horror movies I find that they have sexual tension there as something to fall back on if the plot should stall, but Victor Salva kind of eliminates that element of it and has them be brother and sister, and they interact quite convincingly as brother and sister. I mean, some of the conversations they have remind me of conversations that I've had with my older sister, so when we've been travelling together, which we seem to do every year. Now, so I find it quite relatable in that respect. But why this movie really does work for me is that essentially it's a throwback to the old Universal kind of monster horror movies, in the killer, the creeper, which, spoilers alert, you know, he's like a big a humanoid bat thing with giant wings like a gargoyle, and he basically every 23 years for 23 days he gets to eat people on this stretch of highway. The Creeper is, I find, quite a frightening villain. Now, I know that a lot of the criticism around the first Jeepers Creepers movie was that essentially it started off as a really good sort of serial killer thriller and lost it when it introduced the Creeper as some sort of like creature. But to be honest, the seeds are sown from the beginning of the movie that that's where it's going. And it is designed like a monster movie. The way it's shot, some of the sets, it's the old-fashioned monster movie that like companies like Universal used to churn out in the 30s and 40s. And that's why it really does it for me. Like, the score is very loud and bombastic, in the same way that you would expect in a monster movie. And another reason this film really, I like it, but a lot of people criticise it, is that it homages quite a lot of other better movies. I mean, it homages everything from Duel to The Terminator to any string of monster movies and serial killer films. And there are scenes in this that you'll recognise, such as a siege in a police station, which is straight out of the first Terminator movie. But to be honest, I don't mind that, because Victor Salva's obviously a fan of film. And I'm sat there watching it and thinking, oh, you know, I recognise that scene from this film and blah, blah, blah. Very much in the way that Tarantino does it. It's essentially like being a cinematic magpie, like he picks bits out of films he's seen and likes and puts them in this movie. Jeepers Creepers, the first one, I do find to be quite frightening, at least. I mean, how old will I have been when this came out? About 11 years old. And it did quite scare me when I first saw it. And it is quite a frightening movie. It's quite bleak as well, but it never loses its sense of fun. It's also homages films like Jaws in a sense, especially the second film homages Jaws quite a lot, if you ask me. But it never loses its sense of fun and adventure, but it is quite frightening and bleak at the same time, and it's not a very easy line to toe, but I think that the first film really does successfully do that. And then moving on to Jeepers Creepers 2, essentially, Victor Salva wrote Jeepers Creepers and wrote the Creeper in a way that he wouldn't be able to do any sequels. He said that the Creeper is only around for 23 days, and if we were going to do a sequel, it'd have to be set in the future, which the studio wouldn't want to do, blah, 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 blah. And I believe it was Francis Ford Coppola, the producer, said, well, why not set it in the same 23 days as the first film? So the sequel, Jeepers Creepers 2, is set a couple of days after the first film, and it's set on day 23 of the Creeper cycle, which essentially means that he's going to be a lot more savage and a lot more desperate to eat as many people as he can before he has to return to the ground from whence he came. The plot follows Ray Wise's character, whose son is snatched at the very beginning of the movie and wants revenge. He's looking for the Creeper, doesn't know what it is, but listens to a police scanner, listening for abductions so that he can go and try and catch and kill whoever did it. And also follows the plot of a high school bus full of a championship basketball team who are stranded in the middle of nowhere and being picked off by the Creeper one by one. This film, a lot of people give this film a bad rap, and I honestly think it's better than people say. It's another guilty pleasure for me. I love both these movies. But essentially, this film is a lot deeper than you would expect. I'm not saying that it's going to change the world, or it's doing anything particularly special, but they make the effort to at least weave into the film certain aspects that you wouldn't normally get. One interesting aspect of this movie is that the dynamic between the high school kids, the basketball team, is very interesting in that they make the character played by the guy from Malcolm in the Middle, whose name escapes me, is a racist. And it does certainly have an undercurrent of racial tension, this movie. As I say as well, this movie really does hammer home the sort of homages to Jaws, especially when Ray Vice is going after the Creeper with like a harpoon gun, and everything from the music to the way it's shot. I mean, this film is clearly on a bigger budget. You know, it's widescreen. It looks a lot bigger budget than the first film. And the Creeper, the design of the Creeper is slightly different, quite a bit darker and bits and pieces like that. But to be honest, it's another fun kind of horror movie, but sort of an adventure film at the same time, and that's why I love these movies, because they are a bit different. I don't think they really fit comfortably into any particular genre. And while some argue that, oh, the first film was alright and the second film was rubbish, I really don't agree with that. I do see them basically as one movie. I don't think I've ever, since the sequel came out on DVD, I don't think I've ever watched them separately. I always watch them back to back because they're only short. And that's why I had a double bill of them last night. So Jeepers Creepers, not only is it a guilty pleasure, it's a film I do genuinely really, really like, and a film I'd recommend. And if you haven't seen it in years, you know, check it out again, because it's good. If you like the sort of old-fashioned Universal monster movies and adventure films, you might get a bit more out of this, but the films, they are good, and I believe that they're actually talking about doing a Jeepers Creepers 3, which I'm not really too sure about. Oh, and Justin Long does cameo in number 2 as well. So it's good to see him return. It does feel like a direct sequel, like it picks up literally just as the first one finished, and they're a perfect double bill if you're watching stuff for Halloween. So those are the first 4 days. Now, there might be some films that I watch where literally they get their own video, because I've got so much to say about them. But essentially what's coming up on the channel will be a film discussion with the Lucha Media Geek, so maybe some reviews with the Lucha Media Geek, to be honest, DVD update and graphic novel reviews. So stay tuned for more horror movie kind of reviews and stuff for October, and thank you for watching this video. Please rate, comment and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I will catch you all later. Thank you.